welcome to a very special episode of Cosmic Road today, where we are joined by Joey, formerly known as Joey Is Not My Name, to talk about Mike Herrera. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack. I know we had tried to do this several months ago, and I kind of held off. Just recently, kind of started showing my face on video, so felt like now would be kind of a good time to do this. So thanks for having me.
Well, I love it because, I've had Mike on the channel. We had a great interview, and his information is so fantastic. And so I don't want to say game changing because we've heard tales before about how, how the control group, that's what I call them, whatever you want to call the Area 51 guys, how they have UFOs and stuff like that. But for somebody as credible as Mike, to say that and having gone to the place where he is said to have gone, and seen what he is said to have seen and been told what he is said to have been told, for him to say that makes this so much more real and credible. Talking about, people being forcefully inducted from third world countries, people with psionic abilities, to use those abilities to lure UFOs in, then to be shot at, so that the control group can harvest the technology. It's mind-blowing information, very important information. So Mike, when he communicated with me, he was able to share, I don't think he would mind me saying this. He was able to share with me a location of the site. I'm not going to say what it was, and he did send me an aerial of the site. I'm not going to share the aerial, but there's nothing really you can see from the aerial. It looks like what you would expect an underground base to look like from the surface. Not a whole lot to see, but you were able to go much further in corroborating that he went to this site. And you have a lot more that you've done besides. So let's get into your amazing investigation. Take it away, Joey.
Yeah, I mean it's ongoing still, for sure. And I guess I can just start with kind of how I got involved with this whole thing because I'm just kind of your typical Redditor, and occasionally get interested in a random case or story, and do some basic internet sleuthing to kind of dig into it. And that's kind of what happened with me with Michael Herrera's story. I was actually quite dismissive of it when it first came out, and um, what actually caused me to take a second look was just seeing the general dismissal over kind of what I felt were pretty minor, kind of speculative reasons. People said, "Oh, he didn't." He says they didn't have a radio when they had the encounter in Indonesia, and therefore he's making up the whole thing. And there were numerous things like that, and to me, what I saw in his case was quite an interesting opportunity because his whole encounter in 2009 centered around a military operation, and not only that, but it was a humanitarian operation. So I'm thinking like, oh, geez, there's got to be journalists and news reports and just all sorts of data to dig through and try to find any sort of um, verification that either A, he's telling the truth about all these details, or B, maybe I find something that proves that he's lying or making something up. There was one detail that I thought was odd, was he had mentioned that the Denver was the only ship in the Seventh Fleet that got diverted to go respond to this humanitarian event. And I was like, oh, that's kind of odd. But sure enough, I found that that was actually the case. And I spent a good amount of time. I kind of published my first post on his story, kind of just going through linking sources to, really it was a copy and paste of his testimony when he's describing the kind of military stuff. And just linking sources to like every kind of quote that he said, and it was like all blue. Like I had like sources for everything. Obviously not the craft that he saw, the important stuff that everyone wants to have corroborated. But still, it was a good start. And at that point, I reached out to Michael because I felt the next step could be to try to find the LZ where he describes this event unfolding. And so we had a conversation. That was about a year ago. I guess a little more than a year ago at this point. And from that point on, I kind of had direct communications with Michael, and I've just been kind of investigating his story kind of for the past year. Now, the thing that's I do want to just emphasize, when we started this video, you kind of summarized a lot of the more extraordinary claims that he's stated. And a lot of that information has been relayed to him by an alleged insider, right? Now, I have no way to prove whether all these things that this person has told Michael is true, you know? So that's
Yeah,
why I say,
Insider, if you want to come on Cosmic Road, you're welcome to come on.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure that would be quite an interesting interview. But I just want to emphasize, like, it's an ongoing investigation. I think a lot of people assume that, I just believe everything that Michael has said, and it's like, we don't have to make a decision, and that was the thing. Like, when he first came forward, it was like everyone was like, all right, we got to decide, is he lying or is he telling the truth? And it's like, there's not nearly enough information for anybody to make that call. So I felt it was important to kind of let I was kind of just in general irritated that here we have everyone's like, oh, we need more whistleblowers, we need more whistleblowers, and here's a whistleblower. We had Biden had signed whistleblower protections into law that previous year, and here's a whistleblower, and we just kick him to the curb and say, oh no, you mispronounced a rifle, so you're clearly lying. We don't want to hear from you anymore. And I just think that's really the wrong approach. I mean, especially, as the UFO community, like, if we're not willing to give these people who come forward the time and space to, uh, let their story be heard, and also give time for details to be vetted and checked out and corroborated and verified. I think we're doing a real disservice and really not encouraging any other whistleblowers to come forward. However, what I will say, kind of tying into, and it's interesting because I didn't realize so you actually know the location Michael went to as well.
Yeah.
So that's a short list of people. But so for me, the biggest moment for me during this whole investigation was, he started telling me that this insider had, gotten in touch with him. He wanted to meet him in person. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. Like, what are the chances you have this incredible story that happened in 2009? What are the chances that a Black Project insider is now reaching out to you and you're going to go fly
Yeah,
out
no,
there? I
I mean,
mean,
it seems so unlikely. I mean, these
yeah,
guys are known for their secrecy. Now they're inviting somebody in. It's interesting that they allow him to get this information out, even want him to get this information out, but they don't allow him to prove it. They're not allowing him to
yeah,
release pictures or video. But we have the same situation with David Grush. They're allowing him to get the information out, but none of the evidence, the classified evidence that he was able to provide to Congress. So,
yeah.
okay.
I want to talk about that in a minute. But I want to emphasize just one point, and that's, you know, my skepticism really increased to a certain extent after I got into, personal connection with him. And it had nothing to do with, like, the way he said things, or it wasn't like a vibe that he gave me where I was like, this is sketchy. It was just the extraordinary level of what he was telling me.
It's
It was
extraordinary
very,
information.
yeah, absolutely. And so he said he was going to go meet this person, and to make a long story short, I basically he had told me the day before that meeting, we had a phone call. That's actually I actually recorded it without his knowledge because I was afraid if something, because I would go back and forth. That, at times I would be like, all right, let me just pretend this is all real. Everything is he's saying is true. If that's the case, like there's a good chance like something might happen to him when he goes out there. They might be trying to trick him to go out there and something happens. And I'm like, I'm in this position where he's told me some things and he's telling me he's going out there. So I kind of need proof, so I could reach out to, I would have reached out to, certain journalists in the community and explain what happened and stuff. But I needed some proof that I was actually talking to him. So I recorded this phone call,
You,
and
you were like his dead man switch, right?
that it kind of just became self-evident that that was essentially, and it's not like I was the only person he was talking to about this. Like there were others he was kind of leaving a paper trail with. It wasn't like I was the chosen one type of thing. It was just I was one of several. And so I recorded that conversation. You can actually listen to it. I did a video with UAP Gerb, and I spoke to Michael. I've since revealed to him that I recorded that and why I did it. And he provided permission to release that publicly. Obviously, I had to censor out certain parts of it, but in on that phone call, he had told me very specific information about, how that meeting was going to unfold, where, when, things like that. And that put me in a really good position to be able to verify a lot of details about that meeting. And so at a certain point, I was able to obtain some evidence that basically I was able to authenticate. Number one, that's very important to acknowledge, is I was able to authenticate this evidence, and I knew that it was real, that it was timely, that it was, where it was proposed to have been uh, created, this evidence. And it led me to be able to essentially track this helicopter that Michael flew on, and I was able to see exactly where this helicopter went. And I actually shared a censored version of that with you months ago. And we can't go into details on like what that is because the nature in which that evidence was kind of obtained is sensitive. But that whole
It was a
thing,
good method.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Michael was even surprised, and I didn't even tell Michael at first that I had done this and tracked the helicopter, and so I use that as an even greater opportunity to ask him some questions about timing and things that maybe he saw along the way, um and so that just even further corroborated, that he was, he went where he said he went. Um,
He didn't know that you were tracking him.
no,
You just did, and you
yeah,
were able to, so it's not like he was just making up a story and going to Vegas that week.
right.
Right, right. So he actually went to the place that he said he was going to go.
And I mean that alone, the location he was taken to is extremely interesting, as you know. Um, and it's like, to me, that whole the way all that unfolded to me was significant enough to I was basically in a position where I felt like this offered a lot of credibility towards Michael, because he simply wasn't lying about meeting this person and going to this place. And so at that point I felt it was important to reach out to certain people in the community like yourself and some other podcasters and people who, I some people I knew like Michael was gonna talk to, and I said, hey, can you put me in touch? Like I'd love to just, share some of this evidence. before your conversation, just so you can at least have a slightly elevated level of trust, at least on that. Um, and and yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of at a point where I've gone. I mean, there are still some leads that I feel could be explored about his 2009 encounter. Um, but I'm kind of at a point where I feel like I want to just kind of sit back a little bit and see how things unfold with what he's currently working on um, with this alleged insider. Um, and I mean, at this point, I kind of my opinion of the credibility of this insider has only increased since I first heard about him, because at this point I've received some other reasons to um find him credible.
Can you go into any of those reasons?
Um I don't really want to, because it's like it's just I would only be able to go so shallow that it's kind of not worth
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
talking about it. And it's still circumstantial, and
Do we
I'm
know what
still.
do we know what branch of the military this insider is in, or anything like that? Is there anything like that you can tell us? I mean, if you can't, that's fine.
No, I really can't. And really, you know so like I've never spoken to this person. For example, I just want to throw that out there, because I know there's been some misconceptions thinking like I'm directly in touch with this person. And I've sort of drawn a line myself, just personally, like, because I'm not a journalist. I'm not an investigator, like private investigator, professional, or whatever. Um, and so to me, it's just like I don't want to like get too far into something that like I shouldn't. And you know, um, I'm just gonna kind of leave that there for now, and not dig into that myself.
No worries. Well, I completely understand that. Have you ever been worried for your own safety during any of this investigation?
Um, I think there's been times where I have. Was it was it warranted? I don't know. I was mostly nervous back when he first got back from meeting this insider for the first time, because he told me most of what he has now at this point revealed publicly in interviews. And so my impression at the time was that this was kind of going to be secret information. Um, and now, I have this information, and it's like, okay, that's kind of, I don't know, is that something like, should I be nervous about that? I really didn't know at the time. At this point, he's basically revealed all of that publicly. And I think, to kind of tie into what you were saying earlier, at the time, I was kind of expecting, like you said, like he's been allowed to relay all this information, but there hasn't been that follow-up of evidence or proof. And I don't really understand that. I don't really understand the what's the angle there?
My guess, okay, this is you're the guest, so you tell me where I'm wrong. But I think there's some sort of pro-disclosure movement within the control group. And that's I say that because David Grush's whistleblowers are still alive. Mike Herrera is still alive. They wanted him to go there to get this information, or at least somebody did. And obviously, it wasn't just one person. There had to be more than one person that knew he went there. There seems to be a pro-disclosure movement, but they are only letting certain stuff come out. If they really wanted to, they could probably have given him some video, but they don't want to. They didn't want David Grush to be able to supply any video. So, it is what it is. It maybe they're afraid of ontological shock, or maybe they are simply preparing the way. They have some sort of disclosure process, 7-year plan, whatever. And so they're trying to seed the information first, and then later may come evidence. Hopefully, that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
I
What
think
what
it's
what do you think
necessary.
about that theory?
I'm tracking what you're saying. It's almost um in a sense, it's almost like a soft disclosure. It could also be an angle where they're sending a message, maybe not to the public, but to maybe other people in other parts of the program. It could be something like that. I think I've gotten to a position where I feel like I recognize that I know so much less than what I thought I kind of had figured out, that I'm just stepping back for now, because it's like it's not a matter of like finding it less credible. It's more that I just don't have enough information to make an assessment yet, you know?
Well, I totally respect that, and I think that if you want to rest on your laurels at this moment, at least you have some laurels to rest on. You've really furthered this conversation a lot, but you were able to go further than that. You actually got in communication with some of Mike's. Is crewmates the right word? Squad mates?
Yeah, platoon members is what I refer to them as. Yeah.
What can you tell us about your communications and interactions with them?
Sure. Um, so I've spoken to, I want to say like a handful of platoon members who knew Michael directly. And every one of them started out with, he's a liar, he's making this up. And so I was like, oh, so you were, um, the majority, this is how the majority of the conversations went. I would say, oh, so you were with him in Indonesia, like boots on the ground. And they'd be like, "Oh no, well, I was in a different squad, but like, I just know he's lying." And I'm like, "Well, you can't know he's lying. Like, that just
Hey, they're
isn't
psionic,
logical."
right?
So it was, it was something like that. It was something like that with the majority of the people. However, it was still important to listen to, what they said about Michael's character, and just their opinions, and also just to get an account of, you know what their experience was on that operation. um
Did you get anybody that was actually on that operation, where they would have seen the man-made UFO?
um I don't know, maybe I have, you know there was one person that I messaged, who was the only person who did not um come out of the gates, calling him a liar.
Is he the
um
one that
they
was afraid to speak?
um
Because there was one guy that said he just refused to answer any questions and he didn't want to talk about it, and it seemed like he was afraid.
Yeah, so that guy's identity hasn't been revealed. So who knows? Maybe it's the same guy.
Okay.
Um, but I will say that the most important person that I spoke to is a person. His name's Nathan. I won't say his last name. He's trying to kind of lay low a little bit. But so Nathan at one point was Michael's team leader, and he he kind of came out pretty soon after Michaels started, kind of becoming well known in the community, after he did his first testimony and stuff. And Nathan says that Michael is making up the UFO stuff as well. And the thing about Nathan is he's credible in the sense that he is who he says he is. A lot of people are like, "Oh, is he being paid to talk bad about Michael?" Like, no, that's not what's going on here. Um, I did I did sense kind of pretty quickly, like, that he didn't like Michael. He never did, you know. And I got that sense from everybody. I mean, I dug through so many. like Facebook profiles and looked up, went way back in time, and you see all the pictures of these guys on deployment, and at times, they're partying and stuff, and like I didn't find a single picture with Michael in it
Hmm.
like in any sort of social situation, and it just emphasized to me how he was this kind of outsider, and he really didn't have many friends in the platoon. So it kind of made sense how, everyone's saying they didn't like him and all this stuff. But but yeah, so Nathan, the thing that's really interesting about what Nathan is saying is he provided a photograph of two people on a helicopter, and he says that one of them is Michael. The other person he named as well. Um, and he said, this is a photograph of us flying into Indonesia to do a mission. And we did a mission and we didn't see a UFO. And Michael's making it all up. And someone found a so there's been a couple of photos of Michael that have been released of him in the military. And in one of those photos, so this is an acknowledged photo of Michael, he's wearing his camouflage, and someone noticed that the camouflage matches from one of those photos and to this other photo that Nathan provided. And so it's very credible evidence that supports what Nathan is saying. Um, you know, the thing that there's a few things that don't make sense in my mind. First of all, Michael has always said from his very first account of what he experienced, he has always said that the mission where he saw this UFO was not with his assigned squad. So his assigned squad was with Nathan in the Marines. Michael, from day one, before Nathan even came out and talked against him, he said, this was a volunteer mission with a bunch of random guys from different squads. So it was just kind of put together ad hoc, and we flew in and conducted this mission. And so to me, it's I mean, it's kind of common sense and logical that if you also did a mission with your assigned squad, why would you lie about it?
Yeah.
Like his
Yeah.
his his testimony is with a volunteer squad. So he could have very easily have, done two missions. Basically Nathan's testimony doesn't actually conflict with Michael's testimony at all. The only reason it can be held against him is simply the fact that Michael is denying it. And so I just, if Michael's making up this whole thing, like why wouldn't, obviously he would be like, why would he lie about the mission he actually did with Nathan when it would, cause this kind of evidence to be held against him? I don't know. The logic there just doesn't make sense because it's like an active decision. It's not like if he made up the UFO story, that's one thing. But then at some point, it would mean that he would have had to made an additional decision to also lie about the mission that Nathan is talking about, which makes no sense. Why, like, people say, oh, well, people lie about everything, about anything for any reason. But like, no, why would you lie if that's literally going to cause it to be held against you and to undermine, this other story that you're making up? So, I mean, Michael denies what Nathan has said. He says he only did one mission in Indonesia, and it was with this volunteer squad. Um, I don't think Nathan is lying, but I do think there's a chance that perhaps he's not remembering it correctly. Maybe that photograph is from a different mission. Maybe it's from a different day, that they were on a helicopter together. But, on the other hand, Michael just flat out says, like, it's just not me. Absolutely not me.
I actually
So,
saw, I know the photo you're talking about, and I saw somebody on Twitter try to do an analysis of it. And they were thinking that it wasn't Michael. They were doing, using some sort of technique to
yeah.
see whether it was Mike or not. And I don't know enough about it to say whether or not, that's on the money or not.
Yeah.
But
I
I
mean,
was,
a
I
lot
was,
of
I was
people.
convinced that there was at least room for doubt.
Yeah, a lot of people feel like the facial structure does not match Michael at all. So they kind of discount the camouflage matching simply because like it just doesn't look like the same person. Um, so I mean that I would say that's the biggest piece of evidence against Michael at this point.
But
And
if Nathan was correct, then why would Michael have been invited to this black site that we know that he did go to?
exactly. Yeah, I mean that was just like so huge for me because especially at the time because this wasn't like some elaborate scheme to, you know, have me publicly leak information and to it's not like this was some kind of psyop type of thing because if it was it would have just been on me and it was like I'm just like this random person. Like it made no sense. Um, and a lot of people saying like, oh, it's maybe it's a psyop and this insider is just kind of going along. And I'm like, well, what are the scenarios here? Like, let's say this is a psyop, right? So option A is Michael's telling the truth about Indonesia, and this CIA person or whoever is swooping in to discredit Michael. Okay, so if that's the scenario, that means Michael's telling the truth about Indonesia, and that's significant in and of itself, right? So, even if that's the case, this is still very interesting. Uh, Scenario B could be if Michael's lying about Indonesia, how could an insider collaborate with him and say, "Hey, I know about the operation you stumbled upon." Because Michael would immediately know he's lying because Michael, in that scenario would have made the whole thing up. Um, so I just like I have a hard time putting together like a logical scenario that just simply makes sense. Someone else had um Patrick on Vetted had suggested, well, maybe this was like an elaborate thing from like maybe this is like a long con and like Michael and the insider like knew each other years before and then this they're like, okay, you're gonna come out with a story about Indonesia and then like later on I'm gonna like pretend meeting you for the first time and then we're gonna go out. I don't know. It's just
But then
like,
how would they have known that you would track Michael
well,
to the
yeah,
black site?
that
Yeah.
that too, and I think Patrick was insinuating like, maybe it was some sort of reverse psychology, but like, man, that
Don't track
just
me, Joey. Don't track me. Right?
yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
you
I
never
mean,
know, right?
it wasn't like that at all. And like, just the fact that like there's never been a point where Michael encouraged me to do really anything with this. This was all my prerogative and initiative to do everything that I've done. I mean, I think like the only thing that he had asked me to do, and I even told him like, hey, it depends, I'll have to, see what I think, and was the so this insider provided Michael a introduction to a book that he's ghostwriting, that this insider is having ghostwritten. It's called Sentinels of Ether. And
Yeah,
so
yeah. Michael
Michael,
sent me the first few chapters of that. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
I
some
know he sent
alarming
it
stuff in
to,
there.
yeah, he sent it to a few people, and so I had posted that to my Reddit as well. But I mean, other than that, this has all just been my own, kind of uh decision. Like anytime I post something about his story, it's kind of on my own accord. I don't like run it by him or anything like that. And so I don't know. I just really have a hard time wrapping my mind around this insider being some sort of psyop type of thing. I mean, it's certainly possible, like I'm not delusional, but like all I'm saying is where's the logic? Like what's the objective here, you know?
Well, I mean, Patrick is right. PsyOps do exist, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I know there's disinformation out there, but this doesn't feel like that. This doesn't, I don't know how you could get there from here, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the problem I have with it, is just like not understanding. And I mean, especially at this point, like I have um I alluded to a little bit earlier that I have some additional kind of corroboration, kind of giving credibility to this insider, that I have so little doubt. I'm very confident this guy is who he says he is, to the
have you been in
degree.
touch with him or her?
No, no, I haven't. I just, to the degree. So, I need to kind of preface as well. Like, I'm not an experiencer. Like, I don't know that UFOs are real. I don't know that aliens are real. I've never seen one myself, so to the degree that a person can kind of believe that this whole thing is real, based on the mountains of kind of circumstantial evidence that has been collected over the decades and decades, and all of the stuff that's been happening over the past few years. um to that extent, I just feel like this insider really seems to be who he says he is. Now, even with that, I have no way to confirm that directly, and I have no way to corroborate any of the information that he's provided to Michael to relay to the public.
Now you say you're going to take a break from it. So is there any potential that you could maybe pursue communication with this insider?
I I'm just not I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy to do that. You know, that it would have to be someone else.
You've
It would
done a
have to
pretty
be
good job
someone.
so far.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like
and I
I don't.
love your impartial but curious attitude.
Yeah. Well, people ask me like, "Oh, do you believe Michael?" Like they want me to give like this straight up answer. And it's like, look, if my mother came to me and told me the stuff that Michael is telling us, like I trust my mother 100%, but it's for someone who, like, 90% of what Michael is describing just simply doesn't fit in my model of the world, and that's okay. Like I don't have to accept anything that he's saying. All I'm doing is starting with the basics. Was he a Marine? Yes, he was a Marine. Was he on this deployment? Yes, he was on this deployment. That's where I started. And that's how I got to where I am right now. There's still a lot more to be uncovered and verified, but so far, there's a whole lot more that have been proven true, that have earned a lot of credibility in my eyes, towards Michael. So, it's not a simple answer. Like, do I believe he went to this black site? I call it a secure facility because like I don't know what's down there, like I can't be like, yeah, it's a black site because it's everything Michael says it is, because I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. But it is absolutely a secured facility.
It
And it's
is.
like really, um it was just crazy to see how he was brought there, the way he was brought there. Um it's just, in my eyes, that alone is significant enough to just listen to this story and see how it unfolds. And that's just that was kind of my whole point with like coming forward with that information. Like, even though, because I was in a tough position where, like, all right, I'm gonna tell the world that like Michael definitely went to this place, but I can't share any evidence. So, it sucked because I got a ton of criticism, and it made sense because I would have been the same way. I would have been critical of that if I was in their shoes. And so for me to be in this position where I totally respect and understand the criticism being thrown at me, um, I just felt like it was important to at least just stand on my own accord and just attest to, yes, he's not lying about this. Like he went to this place, and the compromise that I had thought of was to reach out to people like yourself and others. And I'll say too, I reached out to Ross Coulthart um last year, and he has since publicly stated that he finds Michael's testimony credible. He has also said that he has spoken to Michael and other sources. And, I think the other little tidbit from Ross is someone asked, if there's one word that we should all be Googling furiously to kind of get an insight into this UAP stuff and NHI topic, what would that one word be? And he said psionic. And as you know, psionic is a key part of allegedly what he saw unfold in 2009, and what this insider has been telling him about the program.
Yeah, speaking of Ross, okay, so for me, Mike's information puts some pieces together in a different way, a novel way. But I've heard all the individual pieces before, like Ross Coulthart and Danny Sheehan and others have talked about how the UFOs operate with telepathy. And that's required to interface with that technology, at least some of the time. And many experiencers also report the same thing. And, from my research, it looks like the control group, as I call them, does participate in abductions. So to think that they are taking people from third world countries who are psychically gifted, isn't a big stretch for me. But that's another piece of the puzzle, is that psychically gifted people are legit, and for me that's very true. And I've had firsthand experience with that. But I understand if you're not there yet. But so all these different pieces, I've heard about individually, but to put them together in the way that Michael has seems very outlandish, but also very logical. And the control group is pretty shady, and they've done some shady stuff over the years. So it's not a stretch that they are continuing to do shady stuff, and that they also shoot down UFOs. So why not lure UFOs in to be shot down? Cut out the middleman. It makes sense. It's logical and it's consistent in that way. It makes sense to me. It is outlandish. It is a wild story. It is also very alarming if true. Obviously, these programs need oversight. If there is abuse going on, that needs to stop. And that's why Michael's information is so important. And it'd be really nice if we could get some evidence so that we could, actually do something about it. But I'm hoping that will come in the future. Where else has your investigation taken you? What other important points do you think that we should bring out of all this? Or
Well, I think some of there's some clarification, I think, of there's certain details of Michael's story. People characterize it as like, oh, Michael's story is changing. His story changes all the time, but like that's not that's not how it happened. Like Michael had an experience in 2009. He speculated on what some of those details were. He saw trailers being pulled by trucks. He speculated at the time that uh, there could potentially be drugs in those trailers because he saw some sort of HVAC system type of thing or cylinder on the front of the trailer. And then, when he first heard some insight from this insider, kind of secondhand, um, he was told that no, it wasn't drugs, it was people. And so his mind went to human trafficking, right? And that was kind of incorrect as well. And so when he went out and met this insider in person, he got a much more kind of in-depth explanation. And I think it's more accurately characterized as um, a recruitment operation. Certainly, I certainly feel like my interpretation of it is that these people are exploited. It's certainly not a totally ethical situation. Um, but it's more of a recruitment operation where they bring people from these third world countries um,
But
into,
but if it were that simple, why are they in containers?
to keep them from being able to see, where they are. Maybe they don't want them to see this craft. And, obviously we're speculating here, but
Speculate
yeah,
away, Joey.
yeah. I always hesitate to speculate because I'm afraid that people are going to forget that I just said, "Hey, I'm speculating here," and they're going to think like, "Oh, I believe all this," and I always try to stick to things that I've been able to kind of corroborate and find evidence for. But it's on the other hand, it's also valuable to kind of go through these logic exercises and kind of try to make sense of certain things and um, the containers. Yeah, I mean, I kind of looked at it as like, well, first of all, you want to contain these people so they don't escape and um, you know I don't know if they're on this craft, you don't want them walking around and getting into trouble or whatever. Maybe they don't want them to see the craft itself. They probably don't even know that they're being shuffled onto an anti-gravity craft, right? So it could be something like that. But yeah, I just this idea that like Michael's story changed, it's not really, I don't really see it that way. It's like, he got this information from this insider. And for me, like knowing this insider's real and knowing this meeting took place, I take that more seriously. Um, but yeah, it's I don't know. I just keep going back to the significance of that meeting and the way it unfolded. And I just think it's a story worth paying attention to.
Absolutely, it is. It's important information, and I understand you not wanting to speculate. I appreciate that. I'll speculate, but also to get back to the abuse point, because Mike also talks about how their whole families are brought with them. And the families are probably in a better situation. And the dumb, I asked Mike point blank if it was a dumb, deep underground military base, and he said yes. So I'm comfortable saying a dumb. And he says yes, their lives are improved. Now the psychically gifted people, at least initially, their lives seem to have been greatly shortened by drugs they were given to boost their abilities, according to Mike's information. Apparently, the drugs have gotten better, and I think their lives are longer now, is my understanding. But I would love clarification on any of that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, so the way I understand it is in this situation, what is claimed to have unfolded is essentially this group of operators arrive at this third world country immediately, in their most dire time of need, after this natural disaster, this earthquake, landslides, um, and they provide assistance to this village, that they're near. I don't know if they're targeted specifically or if it's just a general area. They go there and approach these people. They earn their trust. They provide, food, shelter, medical care, um, and at a certain point, they then offer them um, this this option to basically leave their life behind and have a better life. They can bring their entire family, and allegedly they're brought to this these deep underground bases. And if that's true, then it makes sense why we don't see any whistleblowers of these people because they're completely locked and contained in these massive underground facilities. Um, some they allegedly get screened for this genetic ability, like you described, and are used for um, interfacing with different NHI technology. Um, all of this, I have no idea if this is true. I have no way of corroborating any of this. Um, and I was kind of, again, like when Michael first came out with all of this information, I was excited because I was sure that, oh, this must mean like within a few weeks we're going to get evidence and it's going to, and then the world will know and this is all backed up. And that didn't happen, and so um, I am aware of certain things that have kind of caused kind of this disclosure effort to get kind of tripped up a little bit. For instance, the UAP Disclosure Act being gutted was certainly from my perspective seemed like a surprise to what Michael and these insiders were working on. And by the way, it's not just I always refer to it as the insider at like one person. Like there is like this one person in particular that is kind of like the main contact, but it's actually like an entire team of insiders. It's not just one person.
That makes
Um,
sense. It would almost have to be.
yeah, yeah, but it is still curious. Like I wish I knew what the full plan is for disclosure. I know a few details that I can't really talk about, but like it's not nearly enough to kind of know how things are going to unfold next. I do feel confident that there will be something else that is kind of revealed or brought forward, related to what Michael is doing with these insiders. I don't know really any of the details, but I think that's part of my comfort in letting, taking a step back a little bit is because I see that there's something in the works, and I would far more um, I would feel a lot better letting that unfold instead of trying to continue to find little nitpick details to support Michael's case and like putting that out there because I think we're at the point where we really need some significant evidence or corroboration to come forward to kind of further the story. And I will say too that like I think, and I kind of recognized this a while ago. I don't think Michael is really all that concerned about convincing anybody about what happened in Indonesia. Ever since he met with this insider and got involved with them. And a lot of people say like, well, why would this insider need Michael Herrera? What value is he providing? He's doing a lot for these people. I mean, initially there was quite a bit of well, I don't want to say more than I should, but there's definitely value in what Michael's doing, aside from kind of being the public spokesperson for the various details that he wants to release. Um, but yeah, I mean the other thing that I wanted to bring up earlier that I'll just bring up real quick is I kind of recognize that kind of these common things that these common like debunks that get thrown out there about Michael's Indonesia encounter. And the first one being radios, like they would not people say, and I'm not military, so I rely on people who are or were in the military to kind of provide some of these details. But from what I understand, that's extremely odd that they didn't have radios. And to me, it's just like I'm not gonna just like drop this whole thing because of this idea that um, you know, protocol says they should have radios, so the the story's dead. Like, no, sorry, that's not enough for me because if what he's saying is true, this is extremely important. And the fact that I know that this insider is real and he went to this place, that's extremely important. Another thing someone said to me was they're like, oh, you know where the story stops for me? It's when he said he worked in the officers' chow hall on the USS Denver. That doesn't make any sense to me because, I was on Navy ships and the Navy always, staffs the chow halls. So there wouldn't be no reason for a Marine to be in the chow hall. And I ended up, doing a little bit of digging and I found like an official like a journalist had taken a photo of a Marine working in the chow hall, an officer's chow hall on like I forget what ship it was, but it was a, Navy ship. And so that's the thing is like when I hear people be like, oh, there's no, the protocol says this would never happen. So the whole thing's false. I hear you and I understand that some details are odd. Um, but I also wonder if maybe that's part of the reason why this encounter happened because something happened out of the ordinary with how they got deployed. What if the whole volunteer mission was not supposed to happen? Maybe someone, threw this thing together and they sent them out there and it like wasn't on the books and therefore, the craft that they encountered, the people that they encountered didn't know that they were going to be there and it was some mishap, you know. So it's just and I don't know. I mean, that's total speculation there too. I just I want to find, concrete evidence um that proves it in either direction, you know? Um, and so that's why I don't like I respect what those people are saying and I appreciate that those opinions and that information and that corroboration because it, becomes multiple people. But it just I feel like this deserves um finding that definitive those definitive pieces of evidence instead of just kind of leaning on, well, this is how it should have happened, or statistically, this would have been the most likely way it should have unfolded, but Michael's saying it, different, and so it's so that's kind of where I'm at with the whole thing is just looking for more concrete evidence.
Looking for evidence and waiting for the next shoe to drop, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. If you do continue your investigation, I hope you come back on the show to talk about it. If you pursue a different investigation, I would love to hear the details of that.
Well, honestly, like I do. So I have never had a desire to become uh like a UFO content creator, investigator, because it's really like I have a lot of respect for what you do, Jack, because it's a very tough community. There are a lot of people who it's very polarizing. You put yourself out there, you get into a situation where let's say a new case comes out and you want to talk about it and there's nothing wrong with that, but then let's say a week later it gets proven as like this obvious hoax and now it's like a big embarrassment, and so it's like it's so hard. It's such a hard topic to be a content creator in, for that reason. And I give you a lot of credit for being willing to have those conversations, and explore different ideas and speculate um, and I just hope that we'll get more solid evidence, for a lot of these different things that we talk about, because I think everyone will probably feel the same way. Is that like we kind of felt like that would happen by now, and I'm waiting for it.
Yeah, I was hoping 2024 was going to be a big year,
Yeah,
and maybe not so much. Maybe not so much.
yeah,
But we do have Lou's book to look forward to. Who knows? We have David Grush's mythical op-ed.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've got
But
Lou's book on pre-order, so I'll be
yeah,
reading that when it
me
comes out.
too. Me too. Yeah, really, really looking forward to it. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking a break from all this, but I hope you get back into the ring at some point because I really appreciate your intelligent, impartial way of going about investigations.
I appreciate
I think we
that.
need more of that.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
So anyway, is there, I normally ask if there's a way, any current projects you're working on or a way to contact you if people wanted to. I don't know if that's apt in this case, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend, if anyone is interested in learning more about my investigation on Michael Herrera, there's a couple of videos that I collaborated with UAP Gerb on his YouTube channel. And we did an in-person interview a few weeks ago with Michael. That's on UAP Gerb's YouTube channel as well. And you can find me on Reddit. I have, if you go through my post history, you can see kind of all of the kind of more in-depth investigations that I've done on this case, and I'm on X as well if you want to shout out over there. So yeah, my handle is Joey is not my name. So,
All right.
but
Well,
thanks.
Joey,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I
thanks
didn't mean to
thanks
step
for
on you. Okay.
no, no, I just want to thank you for having me on the show. It's great. I'm glad I can like do this. Like originally we were just gonna do audio only because, and you know what? Like people criticize me for being anonymous, but it's like everyone's anonymous on Reddit. It wasn't like I was jumping into this to be anonymous. It just happened to be that way. So I'm glad, I'm at a point where, I can at least show my face and, do this. So this is definitely the better way to go. I'm glad we waited.
Me too. I am so grateful for you coming on the show, and I love it. Everybody, go check out Joey's information and give him a big thumbs up and a big thank you in the comments section. And thank you again for coming on the show, Joey.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.